Well, not the greatest beginning to a 6-game road trip for the Warriors. They fall in Atlanta, 124-115. They're now 41-30 on the year, and they're off tomorrow. You got a couple of important games around the West going on tomorrow. By the time the Warriors play next, they might not be the 6th seed. That is the reality for the Warriors after what happened today. Not a lot else happening around the West that is of that much importance to the Warriors. The Clippers not playing, the T-Wolves not playing. We'll take a look at the schedule tomorrow, though, to tell you what to look out for the rest of the weekend. But bottom line for today, the Warriors, they come out flat in Atlanta. They get down by 20 in the first quarter. They get back to within 6 early in the third quarter with consecutive threes by Post and Podziemski early to begin that second half. But they never got closer than 6. They got back down by 20+. Later on in the second half, they got back within 10 with like 4 minutes to go, but too little too late, and the Warriors just could not come back from down 20 with the lacking offensive firepower. You don't have Steph. Of course, he missed this game with that injured backside of his, the pelvic contusion, expected to be reevaluated on Monday. Maybe he returns as early as Tuesday in Miami, the Warriors' next game. But without Steph, you just can't get down by 20 and expect to be able to win a basketball game against an elite offense like Atlanta. You needed to make this a lower scoring game. And I know that's difficult to say because this Atlanta team is one of the best offenses in the league, and they have been for the last 2 months. How about this? Since February 1st, so all of February and to this point, all of March, the Atlanta Hawks averaging 122 points per game. That is the third best mark in the NBA. Field goal percentage at 49%, fourth best mark in the NBA. Three-point field goal percentage, 38%, also the fourth best mark in the NBA. So this is a really good Atlanta offense. No one is denying that, but this was a pretty rough Warriors defensive performance. So many easy buckets in the paint. You look at what Atlanta did in the paint in this one, 60 points in the paint. They dominated the Warriors in the paint 60-44, the points in the paint advantage. And the Warriors just could not get out of their way defensively. You had some nice offensive performances. I mean, Jimmy Butler was good with 25 points, 8 assists. Moses Moody scored 20, although a chunk of those came in not quite garbage time, but almost garbage time, where you felt like, oh, maybe there's a chance the Warriors could win this one. But you felt like the game was mostly over. Kuminga had himself a really nice first half, but did not play the entire fourth quarter, did not play really much at all in the second half entirely. Kuminga in the second half played only 6 minutes and 56 seconds, all of which came in the third. He was scoreless in that 7-minute chunk, and then did not see the floor again the rest of the way, including the entire fourth quarter. And I think if you were to ask Steve Kerr, and he might be asked, we might be able to hear from Steve Kerr about that a little bit later on here on Warriors Wrap-Up, depends what the assembled media in Atlanta asks him. If they ask why didn't Kuminga play more in the second half, I would guess Steve Kerr's going to point to the defensive end. I was keeping an eye on Kuminga there, and and he's not alone. There were a number of Warriors that were guilty of this. But he just would lose his defender often, and it led to open shots. It led to backdoor cuts. It led to easy lanes to the hoop, and it's how Atlanta built a 20-point lead in the first quarter. They scored 40 points in the first quarter of this one. The second most points the Warriors have allowed in the first quarter all season. This just felt like I've seen the word scheduled loss thrown around in our YouTube chat, and actually it was on our text line at 888-957-9570. Trying to go back and find that text message, but I can't do it. I believe it came from the 707, and shout out to the 707. Appreciate you tuning in. I don't think this was a scheduled loss. I mean, the Warriors had a day off. It wasn't a back-to-back. Now, I get you just had a long homestand. You're playing games like every other day. You had a back-to-back this past week leading towards the end of your homestand. But, I mean, you traveled yesterday. You're getting ready for this game today. I don't think that the scheduled loss is any reason for this team coming out flat. I mean, they came out flat. They gave up 40 points in the first quarter. The defense was really, really bad. Sometimes opponents are just hitting shot after shot after shot, and I know a lot of Warrior fans are going to point out, Well, I mean, Onyeka Okongwu, not much of a scorer, and he was amazing in the first half. And what about George Niang? He scored 23 and couldn't miss from deep. I mean, these are quality players. Onyeka Okongwu is a very good player. George Niang is a shooter off the bench, and you give him open looks, he's going to make them more than he misses them. Sometimes it is just opponents making tough shots. That's not what this one was. This was just bad Warrior defense. And now you look at the Warriors over the course of the last 2 games, 8 quarters of basketball. The vast majority of those 8 quarters of basketball, they've been pretty darn bad defensively. They beat Toronto with an elite fourth quarter defensively. But through 3 quarters against Toronto, they were just absolutely terrible defensively. They gave up, I think it was 92 points through 3 quarters against Toronto. Not a great offensive team. This is a little different because Atlanta is an elite offensive team. But Atlanta scores 40 on you in the first quarter. They had 69 points at halftime. They had 98 points through 3 quarters. Now, I know a big part of that is just the first quarter alone. You gave up 29 in the second, 29 in the third. Those aren't terrible numbers by themselves, but you dig yourself that big of a hole in the first quarter, you're going to need to hold somebody to like 18 points in 1 quarter really to have a shot. And the Warriors didn't do that. 29 points in the second, 29 in the third, 26 in the fourth. You scored a little bit. I mean, you scored 115. If you were to tell me coming in the Warriors scored 115 without Steph, I would have told you I felt like they had a decent shot of winning this basketball game, because I don't know how you guys feel about this Warrior team as a whole, and I'm keeping my eye on our YouTube chat, youtube.com/957thegame. I have a lot more faith in the Warriors defense over the course of like the rest of the year and into the postseason than I do their offense. Today did not fit that description, although the offense wasn't always pretty either. But with Jimmy Butler and with Draymond Green and with Moses Moody, who I think is developing into a really positive defender. Podziemski kind of got picked on a little bit in this one, but he has been, I think, better than I expected him to be this year defensively, specifically like the last month and a half since the Jimmy Butler acquisition. I think Podziemski's been pretty solid defensively. He was kind of getting picked on defensively in this one. But all that said, I think I have a little bit more faith in the Warriors defensively than I do in them offensively. I think they are close to pretty darn elite defensively, and I think they're just good offensively. And I think they're going to have to lean on the defense to carry them. And today, it didn't for whatever reason. Now, maybe it is just added exhaustion. If you could ask the Warriors, now the Warriors have 2 days off, right? They don't play tomorrow on Sunday, and they don't play Monday. They next play on Tuesday. Then they play on Friday. So over the course of, let's count days off. You have Sunday, Monday, game Tuesday, it's the third day, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Over the course of the next 6 days, you have only 2 games. If you were to ask the Warriors, would they have rather played today or tomorrow? They probably would have said tomorrow to give themselves 2 days off before this first game of the road trip. But this still didn't really feel like an effort that was up to the Warriors' standards. Nowhere near it at all. And they fall in this one 124-115. 888-957-9570 is the number to call. It's also the text line. Mark Randy with you here on Warriors Wrap Up as the Dubs fall again 124-115. The Warriors now 41-30. Believe it or not, it's the Warriors' 6th consecutive loss to the Hawks in Atlanta. That almost is hard to believe. And I see a mention from Double and Marge on our YouTube chat, youtube.com/957thegame, to join the conversation. Double and Marge saying it's the long flight across country. It happens every year. Maybe it happens specifically in Atlanta because the Warriors have lost 6 consecutive games to the Hawks in Atlanta. And that's, all of those years weren't great Warrior teams, right? This year, a quality Warrior team. Last year, better than most Warrior team. Year before, same story. Year before that, they were a championship team. But a couple of years before that, they had a couple of lean years, right? So 6 consecutive losses for the Warriors in Atlanta versus the Hawks. And the Warriors are now 7-4 without Steph. And with the loss, the Warriors are only a half game ahead of the Clippers and Minnesota for 6th place in the Western Conference. if you were with me on Warriors Live earlier today, I was telling you I think the Clippers are the new team to fear for the Warriors compared to the T-Wolves for a number of reasons. Entering the day, the T-Wolves had 2 more losses than the Warriors. That number now is down to just 1 more loss than the Warriors because the Warriors lost today. But the Clippers only had 1 more loss. Now the same number of losses. They played 1 fewer game. They play tomorrow against OKC, which is not going to be a gimme game, no doubt. But let's just say that the Clippers beat OKC tomorrow. That means the Warriors, the next time they played basketball, they would be behind the Clippers. If the Clippers win tomorrow, the teams would have identical records, and the Clippers have the tiebreaker. So the Warriors might lose their grasp on the 6th seed if the Clippers beat OKC, which isn't necessarily expected. OKC is a hell of a basketball team and best record in the NBA, but the Clippers are one of the hottest teams in the league. They've won 5 consecutive games. They've won 8 of 9. So we'll check in on that game, of course, tomorrow or on Monday once we're all back here at 95.7 The Game. But keep an eye on that game tomorrow. I'll let you know what other games you have to worry about tomorrow, and I'll take a look at the schedules for both the T-Wolves and for the Clippers, and maybe even a team like the Grizzlies, who are now 2 games ahead of the Warriors for the 5 seed in the West. We'll do all that before we get on out of here tonight here on Warriors Wrap-Up. It's Mark Randy with you. Again, Dubs fall in Atlanta 124-115. 888-957-9570. I see a good question from the 925 on our text line. I'll get to that in a second. I also will keep my eye on our YouTube chat. But first, let's go out to the phone lines. The coach is in Vallejo, and he joins us here now on Warriors Wrap-Up. What's up, Coach? You're on with Mark Randy on 95.7 The Game. How you doing?
Hey, Mark. I'm fine. Glad to see you. Glad to talk to you. And you were talking about the defense of the Warriors, and you said you kind of kept your eye on Kuminga, and I like what you said, that his defense wasn't really bad as anyone else. I think the biggest culprit, and it has been for the last few games, is Brandon Podziemski. He can't cover any point guards in the league. And the point guards, have been beating the Warriors all season, but for some reason, Steve Kerr is in love with Brandon, and they play much better when GP2 actually comes in and plays the point guard, than Podziemski. Yeah, sure, he could hit an occasional three-pointer, but he cannot guard anyone on defense, and he's taking that occasional charging call, which is a very cheap way of playing defense. That's not really playing defense. That's someone else's man. So I think that we need to look at Podziemski, and I think the Warriors need to really draft a point guard next year because they could really use a true point.
Coach, appreciate the call. I will say tonight specifically, Podziemski was going to play major minutes. Didn't really matter how he was playing. You're down your point guard in Steph, and Podziemski's, and I know he's not like necessarily a true or ideal point guard, but he's like one of the only other players on the roster that you could have play that position, unless you wanted to, give it to Pat Spencer. And Pat Spencer in, limited action has looked okay, honestly, better than I've expected. But we're not going to kid ourselves about this specific game. Podziemski was going to play major minutes tonight, and it's what happens when Steph misses. It's what happens when Podziemski misses. The Warriors don't have another ball handling guard. Like who else? I mean, Moody can't do that. Kuminga can't do that. Buddy Hield can't do that. Gary Payton II can't do that. When you're down Steph or Podziemski, essentially Jimmy Butler becomes the second point guard, and he plays basically every second of non-Podziemski minutes. And that's just the way that it has to be because of this roster. Now, Coach, I don't think you're wrong in saying that the Warriors might need another ball handler in the future, and I think you're spot on with that, especially as Steph continues to age. But given what is currently on this roster, I have absolutely zero problem with Podziemski playing 36 minutes and 11 seconds. Only Jimmy Butler played more than him today. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me, given what the Warriors have available to them from an injury standpoint. I don't know what else the option is. Now, he did kind of get picked on defensively in this one. Trae Young kind of had his way. Trae Young wasn't doing a ton of scoring, especially not early. He finishes with 25 points. He didn't really feel like it was his scoring that hurt the Warriors a ton, but he was just getting everybody else involved in the first half. He finished with 25, 5, and 10 assists. He was in complete control of this game, and he definitely dominated those one-on-one opportunities against Podziemski. To be fair to Podziemski, Trae Young is not an easy guy to cover. There's very few players who could do a great job on Trae Young. But Podziemski definitely was not at his best defensively in this game. But again, this was a team-wide thing. I also saw the same exact thing with Jonathan Kuminga. I mean, Kuminga was getting lost. And I saw it on our I think it was on the text line here, 888-957-9570. Steve Kerr decided to play a rookie in Quentin Post more than Jonathan Kuminga. Quentin Post played 27.5 minutes. Kuminga played 21:44, and Kuminga only played a little more than 6 minutes in the second half. I think it's a positional thing, and I think it's a defensive thing. Again, not that Quentin Post was great defensively either, because of the two areas on the floor, the two sides of the floor, defense is definitely Quentin Post's weak point. But the Warriors don't have a ton of other options, although I will point out Steve Kerr did go to Trace Jackson-Davis for a stint in the second half, so he was trying to find something to work. But the Warriors have kind of a plethora of 3s and 4s that they can play, which is what Jonathan Kuminga is. And I think that's the reason why he didn't get a ton of run in the second half. Although his offense was really good in the first half. I mean, I was pleasantly surprised by how he was attacking the rim often, how he wasn't settling for as many 3s, although that kind of changed in the second half. He took a couple of jump shots in the second half. That might be the reason why Steve Kerr decided to not play him as much. But the first half, I mean, he was the reason this wasn't like a 20-point game at half. His scoring in the second quarter specifically, Kuminga had 16 points at halftime. 12 of them on 4 of 6 shooting came in the second quarter. I mean, he was the reason it was not a 20-point game, but instead a 12-point game at the half. We're going to go to the phone lines here in just a second, 888-957-9570. But first, I want to let you know that you're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM and HD1 San Francisco, an Odyssey sports station, always live on the free Odyssey app, and now coming to you live from the Laughing Monk Studios. Okay, back out to the phones we go. Manny is standing by in Houston. Manny, what's up? You're on Warriors Wrap-Up with Mark Grandy. How you doing, Manny?
I'm good. How are you doing, Grandy?
I'm doing all right. I mean, kind of a disheartening effort from the Warriors. What do you think, Manny?
You know, it was a tough one to swallow tonight, especially because, you know, like you said, there wasn't great defense tonight from the team. And I think a problem, even since Jimmy has arrived, is that someone's always going off for 35 plus, or like tonight, you've had multiple double-digit scores. I think a big problem in that scheme, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a lot of almost like elevator screens that they were doing at the elbow that somebody would slip off, get into the middle. No one was talking on defense, whether it was like Kuminga, Gee, Draymond, which allowed an easy pass, a late closeout, and an easy 3. So there was no fast break offense for us, which I think hindered our half court, but there's no decisive movement. Like, I don't know how you expect to break down a defense if no one is diving to the basket and someone's overhelping, getting you that open 3. So I think everybody's just kind of standing in their position, and they need to be less of a corner man. And my last point, Kuminga, I think his problem, he's just settling when I need to see him use his speed, his size, get to the bucket, and elevate over everyone.
Yeah, Manny, appreciate the call. I think your points do kind of go hand in hand as well. I think also a lot of this, and what Manny's talking about, is the Warriors' offensive execution. I think a lot of it is also just life without Steph. Steph creates so much, even if the ball is not in his hands, and even if he goes 0 for 10 from the field. Just him being out there changes the geometry of the court and changes the rules of the defenders. It makes everything so much easier for everybody else. So one, without Steph, it's not going to look the same. It's impossible for the Warriors to get the same amount of open looks the same way, at least. You're going to have to work harder for it. But I also noticed that too, Manny. I think there was a lot of just kind of standing around on offense. There was a lot of ball goes to whoever, any number of people on the wing and on the left side, and you get a defender right in his face. You got help to the corner on the left side, And, jab step, jab step, jab step, pump fake, try to dribble baseline. You get cut off there. You dribble back out to the corner. You pick up your dribble, and there's nowhere to go, and everyone's just standing around the perimeter. And then you have to throw the ball to the deep left wing, late shot clock, and Draymond has to take a really deep three. Jimmy Butler has to take like a one-footed step-back three to beat the shot clock buzzer. Like, that happened a number of times today. And I think where Manny's 2 points kind of converge into one, this is not unique to Kuminga tonight, because I think it was the case for a lot of Warriors tonight. But oftentimes what happens when Kuminga's on the floor on offense, and honestly, today it worked. I mean, he got a good amount of points out of it. But when Kuminga's on the floor, and especially when he's on the floor with Steph, and this was very, very evident in the first half against Toronto on Thursday. When he's on the floor with Steph, the Warriors like to run their offense one way, which is, ball movement, read and react. The defense is going to follow Steph. They're going to send a double his way. There's going to be 3 defenders shaded his way at times. So if you just move the ball quick enough and you make the right decision with passes or cuts or drives and then passes, you're going to find an opening. Like, there's going to be space and you're going to get a good look. Just by the nature of the way that Steph kind of like changes the dynamics of the on-court defense. Like, you're going to find something. But oftentimes what happens, even in those situations, when the ball finds Kuminga, whether it's on the corner or on the wing or up top of the key, especially on the wings and corners, because you're kind of trapped in that half of the court, the ball just kind of sticks. It kind of sticks in his hands. And sometimes, he hits a jab and he gets a crossover and gets to the paint with a nice cross from right to left, drives baseline and finishes or gets to the free throw line. And okay, you get 2 points out of it. You get 2 free throws out of it. You hope he makes them. And, that's a solid possession. But it's not the style in which the Warriors like to run their offense. And it's not like I'm not going to the extent of saying like it's a black hole whenever the ball gets to Kuminga, but it's a very clear distinction in the way in which the Warriors offense looks and feels when Kuminga is the one touching it a lot or he's not. Because the ball oftentimes just kind of sits in his hands and the shot clock dwindles, and sometimes it works because that's how Kuminga gets his. Like, that's what Kuminga's good at. But sometimes it also results in kind of a dead possession where you don't have a lot going on. I also think the other thing about Kuminga, and I think we got to be fair to Kuminga, I don't think he fully trusts, maybe it's more of a mental thing than a physical thing, but I don't think he fully trusts the ankle again just yet. I haven't seen the same kind of burst in terms of driving past defenders. Like, we've seen him jump. Like, his athleticism is still there, of course, but I'm talking about cutting. I'm talking about changing direction. I'm talking about planting on that ankle, putting all of your weight on that one ankle and then cutting back to the left or cutting back to the right. I don't think he fully trusts that just yet, and I think that's part of it. But the indecision stands out to me, and in general, the style with which the Warriors play, it differs greatly when the ball is in Kuminga's hands than it does when it's elsewhere. Now, again, I say all of that to say that today, this game tonight, it was really everybody. Like, there wasn't a ton of movement. Now, Jimmy Butler still does a lot of that himself. But when the Warriors were without Steph today, it didn't feel nearly it didn't feel a lot like Warriors basketball for the majority of the game. And that was not just Kuminga. It was a lot of Warriors. And I thought for the most part when Kuminga was in, I thought his offense was good. I mean, again, that second quarter, if he does not have the second quarter that he had, the Warriors are down by 20, if not more at half. It was a 12-point game. I don't know how you guys felt. You can let me know, 888-957-9570. I felt like the Warriors were lucky they were not down by 20 at halftime. Being down 12 felt like a blessing for the Warriors. They were down 69-57 when the Hawks had shot 60% from the field in the first half. 60% from the field in the first half. And this was an offense for the Warriors, as we're just talking about, that didn't feel like they were ever really in any kind of crazy rhythm or that they were executing great. And you had given up 60% shooting on the other side, and you were only down 12. I mean, that's nearly a miracle. And And they got within 6 in the first minute of the third quarter. Post hit a 3. Pajemski hit a 3. It's a 6-point game. And you're thinking, all right, here we go. Get back in this thing. And you might be able to sneak out of there with a win. But I think oftentimes what happens, and I saw this question earlier on our text line, 888-957-9570. When will the Warriors start better? Here it is, the 925. When are they going to learn to start faster? Good question, 925. This has been something that has kind of plagued the Warriors, not so much on the homestand, but you remember the last road trip? They got down huge against Orlando, and it took Steph 56-point performance to win that game. When Jimmy missed the Philadelphia game, they got down in that one. They got down by 22 in the first quarter in Brooklyn on that road trip. On the road, they're getting in a habit of falling behind big early. And sometimes you're going to just be good enough, or Steph is going to be good enough to will you back and win those games, or the opponent is just going to, frankly, not be good enough to not be able to hold that. But you get down big, like the Warriors did, down 20 in the first quarter, against not a great basketball team, but a quality basketball team. The Hawks are going to be a play-in team, no doubt. They're locked into a play-in spot, not officially, not mathematically, but they're going to be a play-in team, probably a 7 or 8 in the play-in in the East. That's a quality team. You get behind that much on the road, you're maybe a little bit tired yourself. You might have the ability to scratch and claw your way back in the game at some point, like the Warriors did, down only 6 early in the third, but you just use up so much energy to get back within a couple of possessions that once you get back into the game, you don't have a ton left in the tank to complete the comeback and to then compete the rest of the way. They got down 6, the lead pretty immediately back up to 17, and it got all the way back up above 20 points in the fourth quarter. Then another mini run. Warriors back within 10, 4 minutes to go. But then again, kind of the story of the game, once the Warriors make a run, then the Hawks are winning every hustle play. They're getting every loose ball. They're on the offensive glass. They're deflecting Warriors passes. They're getting out in transition and they're running. And then suddenly the lead back up and the game's over at that point. That was kind of the story of this Warriors game. You get down big and you're not going to have enough in the tank, especially a veteran team who just traveled cross country yesterday. You're not going to have enough left in the tank to turn around and come all the way back. So that was the story of this one. The Warriors just another slow start. Man, that was a rough one for the Warriors. They lose 124 to 115, the final score. The Hawks 2 games below 500, but believe it or not, they're the 7 seed in the East at 34 and 36. The Warriors with the loss 41 and 30, 11 games over 500 once again. It's the Warriors' 6th consecutive loss to the Hawks in Atlanta, and the Warriors are now 7 and 4 without Steph this year. Oddly enough, they are, again, still pretty safely over 500 without Steph, but they're only a half game ahead of the Clippers and Minnesota for 6th in the Western Conference. And I have circled the Clippers as the team to be a little more wary of, despite the fact that they do have a much tougher schedule. They have OKC tomorrow. They're in New York versus the Knicks. They have Cleveland. They have Houston. Orlando's not an easy game on the road. They got them coming up. They also have another date with the Warriors. That's the final game of the regular season, a 12:30 tip on Sunday, April 13th. They got a challenging schedule, but because they are now even with the Warriors in the loss column, both teams have 30 losses, and they have the tiebreaker over the Warriors. Even if the Warriors beat the Clippers to close out the regular season, the Clippers have the tiebreaker. So really, the Clippers control their own destiny. If the Clippers win out, which would include a win over the Warriors, of course, at the end of the regular season, if the Clippers win out, they are the 6th seed. The Warriors need to either beat the Clippers or they need to hope that the Clippers lose elsewhere for the Warriors to have a chance to claim that 6th seed. And there's still a ton of games left. You expect the Clippers to lose at least a game or 2 down the stretch. But right now, the Clippers now control their destiny. You're even in the loss column. You have one more win. If they win out, they have the tiebreaker already. They're the 6th seed. At worst, they're ahead of you, is the better way to put it in the Western Conference standings. But again, OKC tomorrow, this story could switch instantly if the Clippers lose to OKC. Meanwhile, Minnesota, they were not in action today either. They play not until Monday. Remember, they've played right now one more game than the Warriors, but entering the day 2 more games than the Warriors. They're in Indiana on Monday. Then they're off until Friday. They have a lot of time off because, again, they've played that extra game versus the Warriors right now. So they have a lot of time off, and they have a much easier schedule than the Clippers do. But it's hard to play that schedule game also because, like, the Clippers have Houston coming up near the end of the regular season. The third to last game of the Clippers' regular year, they have Houston. There's a chance that Houston could be locked into a playoff spot, and they just do not care about that game. So what we're circling now as a tough game for the Clippers might not ultimately be a tough game for the Clippers. But on paper, the Clippers have a tougher schedule left than either the Wolves or the Warriors. But I'm still circling the Clippers as the team to be more fearful of because they're even in the loss column with the Warriors and they have the tiebreaker. The T-Wolves still have one more loss than the Warriors, and the Warriors have the tiebreaker there. If the Warriors are even with Minnesota, they are on top of them. If the Clippers are even with the Warriors, the Clippers are on top of them. So that's the way that I'm thinking about these Western Conference standings right now. All right, 888-957-9570. We're going to hear from Steve Kerr coming up in just a little bit here on Warriors Wrap Up as we get that sound ready for you. Steve Kerr addressing the media post-game earlier today in Atlanta, 124-115. The Warriors got down by 20 early in this one. Now, this is a really good Atlanta team, Atlanta offense, I should say. They've been playing better of late. They had won, I think they'd won 6 of their last 8 games. I forget exactly. I have it for you. Give me one sec. The Hawks, they'd won 5 of their last 7. 5 of their last 7, including 2 wins over the Pacers, a quality team in that span. So they've been playing better basketball. Now they've won 6 of their last 8, but their offense has really been elite of late. Third most points per game, 122 per game for Atlanta since February 1st. So not a surprise to see the Atlanta offense give the Warriors defense some problems, but I didn't expect it to this extent. 40 points in the first quarter, then 29, 29, and 26, ultimately 124 points. And the Hawks, they ride that to a victory. Trae Young had 25. Onyeka Okongwu had 22. George Niang off the bench had 23 points. A couple of others, in fact, 3 others in double figures for the Hawks. Just too much offense for Atlanta, and the Warriors' offense just was not smooth enough at any point in this game. You got 25 and 8 from Jimmy Butler. Moody had 20, 19 from Podziemski, 16 from Kuminga, 11 from GP2, who was big in his return. How about this? In a game in which the Warriors lost by 9, 124-115, there were only 2 Warriors that were positive plus minus, and Jimmy Butler was plus 11. You know how difficult it is to be plus 11 in a game in which you lose by 9? And GP2 in 17 minutes was plus 6 in a game in which you lose by 9. That means in the 10 minutes that Jimmy Butler did not play, the Warriors were outscored by 20 points. 38 minutes with Jimmy on the floor, the Warriors outscored the Hawks by 11. In the 10 minutes that he rested, the Hawks outscored the Warriors by 20. That is a staggering number. That kind of feels like a Steph Curry number. But that's the reality of how this one was for the Golden State Warriors. I also want to talk about something that I know popped up among Warrior fans on Thursday night and Friday, yesterday, after Steph Curry went down with that injury, right, against the Raptors. Late third quarter, he kind of gets body slammed. I don't know how a foul wasn't called. Gets body slammed, lands on his backside, tailbone area. Immediately, you could tell he was in major pain. And immediately, all of our minds goes to, oh man, like, is he done for the year? Is he out for the regular season? Are we hoping maybe he's back for the play-in? Because without Steph, this team probably not going to be able to claim the 6th seed, given how hot the Clippers have been and how good of late Minnesota has been as well. Ultimately seems to be not going to be a major absence. He's going to get reevaluated Monday before the Warriors play in Miami on Tuesday. Even if he misses Miami on Tuesday, which if I were to guess, he would. But even if he does, the Warriors don't play again until Friday. So he would have essentially an entire week off, and he would only miss 2 games. So the schedule kind of works to the Warriors' benefit. That's the good news. But there had been a lot of talk about the Steph Curry injury, assuming that it was minor and that the Warriors wouldn't miss him for any postseason games, how this could potentially be a blessing in disguise for this Warrior team, because it means Steph, who was just not taken out of a game, but told by Steve Kerr to rest because of both physical and mental exhaustion, he needs some time off, and maybe some time off would ultimately help him, and that might make him more fresh and make the Warriors more dangerous come the postseason. Okay, I hear you. In a perfect world, yeah. If I didn't have to play Steph the final 11 or 12 games of the regular season, and you could guarantee me wins and guarantee me you're the 6th seed, sure thing, let's do it. The difference, and a lot of people would harken back to what happened at the end of the 2022 regular season when Steph missed the final 11 games of that year, and then the Warriors entered the postseason and had a fresh Steph and ultimately won the championship. They would say something similar to that could happen. We forget what happened at the end of that 2022 regular season. Steph missed the final 11. The first 7 games that he missed, the first 7 of those 11 that he missed, the Warriors went 1-6 in those 7 games. They ultimately bounced back and won their final 4, but still, they finished 5-6 in those 11 games without Steph. Let's just pretend that Steph missed the rest of the regular season, and let's give him an extra win. So instead of going 5-6 like they did at the end of 2022 without Steph, let's just say they go 6-6. And by the way, today was the beginning of that 12-game stretch to close the season. They already are 0-1 in those 12. So let's say they go 6-5 now in their final 11 without Steph. They would be the 8th seed. They're not going to be the 6. They're not going to be the 7. They would be the 8th seed. And you know what the 8th seed means? The 8th seed means you have to beat either the Clippers or the T-Wolves in the first play-in game on the road. You have to go to LA or go to Minnesota and win that game. If you lose that game, you then have to play someone like Phoenix or Sacramento or Dallas if they get healthy and try to get back in the play-in, or Portland if they play really good basketball down the stretch. You'd have to then play one of those teams at home and win. And if you win that game, you then would have to take on OKC in the first round of the playoffs. This whole blessing in disguise discussion, talking point around Steph, it's great in theory. And the theory is, yeah, if you can guarantee me the 6th seed, then sure, let's do it. Then rest Draymond and rest Jimmy and rest everybody important. But the reality is the Warriors in 2022 were comfortably the 3 seed. They could afford some losses. They could rest Steph. Even if he wasn't hurt, they could have rested Steph. And they could have him fresh and ready to go. The reality for this Warrior team is they were so darn bad early in the year, they don't have the ability. They haven't earned the right to be able to rest guys and hope that it doesn't impact them in the standings. And by the way, I don't think this is a thought that's going on in the Warriors franchise at all, inside the Warriors organization. But the idea that this Warrior team can survive down the stretch of this season without Steph and hold on to the 6th seed is absolutely wild to me. And there's a chance he only misses 2 games. There's a chance he only misses this 1 game, by the way. I would say he's probably going to miss Miami as well. Let's just say he misses 2. Let's just say he misses this game and he misses the game in Miami on Tuesday, but he returns for New Orleans on Friday. Well, guess what? Even if they win in Miami, there is a very real possibility the Warriors lose out on the 6th seed by 1 game or by a tiebreaker. And that means the 1 game that they lost without Steph would be the difference between the Warriors being the 6 and right into the playoffs and having a full week off, or being the 7 and having to survive the play-in tournament. Like, there's no way that this can be a blessing in disguise for the Warriors. They absolutely need Steph. You saw what it looked like today without him. That offense was rough at times. The defense wasn't great either, and Steph isn't going to solve all of those problems. But it was very, very rough without him. Now, the 925 is saying even without Curry, they should be able to beat subpar teams like Atlanta. Inexcusable loss with a chance to get to the 5 seed. 925, I hear you. Like, this is not a great Atlanta team, but they are an okay team. They're going to be a play-in team, which I know in the East doesn't say all that much, but they're an elite offensive team. Now, you should be able to score on them, and the Warriors scored 115. That's not a bad number. I would just warn to you, 925, forget about the 5 seed. With today's loss, the Warriors are a full 2 games behind Memphis now. Now, Memphis might continue to lose, and you have the tiebreaker over Memphis. But the sole focus should be getting the 6th seed for the Warriors, considering what is looming behind you in the standings, which are the Clippers and the T-Wolves. Okay, time for a break here on Warriors Wrap-Up. It's Mark Randy with you. When we come back, we'll hear from Coach Kerr. Plus, we got some Draymond Green post-game sound for you that we're going to hear as well. It's a Mark Randy with you. Warriors Wrap-Up on 95.7 The Game. The Hawks beat the Warriors 124-115. The Warriors begin this 6-game road trip with a loss in ATL, and they're now 41-30 on the season. More Warriors Wrap-Up next here on 95.7 The Game.
Sometimes I think Butler just wills the ball into the basket.
Now back to Warriors Wrap Up on 95.7 The Game.
Well, Jimmy Butler is pretty strong-willed, but he couldn't quite will the Warriors to a win in this one. They lose. Final score 124-115. Jimmy was good. I mean, he had 25 points in this one. 25 points, 4 rebounds, 8 assists. I told you guys, if you were listening with me on Warriors Live, I told you over 7.5 assists for Jimmy Butler, and he finished with 8. So at least I got that going for me today. We got the over on Jimmy Butler assists, but it wasn't enough for the Warriors to sneak out a win. Again, the final score 124-115. Story of this one was another slow start, and that is becoming common for the Warriors, especially on the road. It happened a number of times on the road trip, despite the fact that that last road trip that was the 5-gamer? How long was that road trip? It was Orlando, Philadelphia, Charlotte, New York, and Brooklyn. Yeah, the 5-game road trip where they went 4-1. I think only one first half they won, and it was in Charlotte. Other than that, they got outscored in first halves in all of those games. They were down big in Orlando. They were down decent amount in Philly. They were down big in Brooklyn. I think the Knicks game was relatively close, and then they were up at half in Charlotte. But they have gotten into a habit of, on the road, falling behind big. And that's not a recipe for success with this Warrior team anymore. Like in the past, the Warriors had been able to, and oftentimes I always like to throw out like the games in early February or late January, and it's a Tuesday, and you're on the road out east, and maybe you're a little sleepy, the Warriors team is, and you're a little bit jet-lagged. And so maybe you not that you're taking a half or a quarter off, but you don't feel great about the way that your energy is, and the Warriors get down by 15 points at halftime. And then by the time the second half begins, they kind of like woken up, they have their energy back, and they play like really good basketball for 8 minutes, and suddenly that 15-point deficit, like that is like an 8-point advantage. And that's kind of what the Warriors would do way back when, even not just the KD era, but at times like in 2022, that would happen then. Certainly before KD, it happened too. But that's more of like we're an established team. We know we can kind of just turn it on when we want. The Warriors don't have that ability anymore. And I think a big reason why is because they're now led by a 37-year-old Steph and 35-year-old Draymond and 35-year-old Jimmy. And they just don't always have enough left in the tank to do that. I mean, Draymond said earlier this week, when asked about Steve saying that Steph Curry is just exhausted, Draymond said, well, we're all tired. It's this time of year. We're all tired. That's true, and I'm sure that's true for basically all teams, but it's got to be a little more true for the Warriors specifically and for their veterans specifically than anybody else, because you are, at that advanced age in terms of your basketball life. And you also are a team that has been pushing really hard the last month and a half. Really, really hard. Playing a lot of minutes and going hard every single game. And even the games you lose, they're coming down to the wire. And you're playing like 35, 36, or like Jimmy Butler tonight, 37.5 minutes. Like, you got to feel exhausted. You got to feel tired. And so the Warriors team doesn't have the ability to do that anymore. So I'm circling like first quarters on this road trip as something to be wary of, because it has happened over and over and over again for the Warriors of late. And specifically on the road. So Tuesday in Miami, Warriors have a couple of days off before that game. They better get off to a better start, because if they don't get off to a better start after a couple of days off, I don't know what's going on. But they have to get off to better starts, because they just dug themselves a gigantic hole, got down by 20 in the first half. They fought back to within 6 early in the third, but the lead immediately back up to back up to 17. They get down by, I believe it was 21 points early in the fourth quarter. Warriors ultimately get back to within 10 with like 4+ to go, but not enough. Not enough in the tank to completely come all the way back and then ultimately win the basketball game. So keep an eye on Tuesday in Miami, beginning of the basketball game. First 5 minutes. Are they down 10, or are they in it, or are they up? Keep an eye. those first 5 minutes are going to be pivotal come Tuesday in Miami. 888-957-9570. Back out to the phone lines we go. Steel Toe is in San Mateo. What's up, Steel Toe? You're on Warriors wrap-up here on 95.7 The Game. How you doing?
Doing all right, Grandy. Thank you. Yeah, I just feel like the Warriors are in the beginning, where they kind of start off kind of slow in pretty much a lot of their games. It's the Warriors offense always kind of do their system, where it's almost kind of system to set up the threes kind of a thing. And sometimes that's why you start off slow, because you're starting off trying to set up for the threes and you're not really warmed up through the game. I think Steve Kerr should kind of change, and he's not learning how to use Butler as much, because we just got Butler. So he's kind of learning how to use Butler more effectively and to get more hot sooner in the games. I think Steve Kerr needs to look at something like what I was looking for today was give the ball to Jimmy Butler, kind of pick and roll where Trae Young is defending Jimmy Butler. I never saw that, where Jimmy Butler gets the ball and he tries to go pick and roll and put Trae Young in front. Go against the weakest defender. That's Steve Kerr's problem with his offense. He doesn't go against the weakest defender. Why isn't Kuminga pick and rolling and put Trae Young defending against Kuminga in the low post? Something like that. Pick on the weakest individual defender instead of setting up for a three as a team. You got to look a little bit more detailed and learn how to use Jimmy Butler. I know he just got him, but this is just a suggestion. No complaint here. Thank you, Grandy.
Yeah, I hear you, Steel Toe. I think you hit on something interesting, which is I think oftentimes the Warriors are just a live and die by the three ball team. And especially without Steph Curry, they're just not a good three-point shooting team. Even with Steph, in general, they're like middle of the pack. But it's been a little different since Jimmy Butler got here. They have been like one of the best teams at getting to the free throw line and actually converting their free throws. And Jimmy Butler has changed a lot, but they still take a lot of threes. And if they're making them, they're going to win almost every single game. If they're missing them, then they're going to have trouble offensively. I still don't want to get too far away from what happened defensively in this game, because that was the real reason the Warriors lost. 124 points allowed. That's the most points the Warriors have allowed. Man, it might take me a while to find it. Since the Philadelphia loss, 126 points allowed. And they were missing Jimmy in that game. They're missing Steph in this one. But I think Steel Toe is onto something in terms of the plan of attack offensively at times. And today, maybe especially without Steph Curry, because without Steph, one, it's harder to get open looks from deep. And two, you don't have as good of shooters from deep because you don't have Steph on the floor. Now you hit 16 threes today and you made 42% of them. Like, that's actually not a bad number, but you don't feel nearly as good about those shots as some others. I mean, Podziemski was 5 for 8 from downtown. Quentin Post, who just all he does is shoot insane percentages from deep. He was 3 for 4 from downtown in this one. Quentin Post now on the season is 62 for 141 from deep, 44%. Quentin Post is 44% from downtown this year. He leads all rookies in three-point percentage. 62 threes on the year. Entering today, though, how about this? Entering today, 59 threes in his first 32 games. Those are the most made threes by any Warriors player in their first 32 games of their career. How about that? Quentin Post, 59 threes in his first 32 games. Most made threes by any Warrior player in their first 32 games of their career. And this is a franchise that drafted Steph and Clay. Now, a lot of these records are going to be broken like in every franchise, like next year, or they were already broken last year, or they're going to be broken again this year or next year, just simply because of the way basketball is played today. But that's still pretty impressive. So Quentin Post, he deserves a shout for what he did in this game, 3 for 4 from downtown. He was a little bit picked on defensively, and that's kind of what Steel Toe was talking about. Single out the weakest link for the opposing defense and go at them and attack relentlessly. I think, and this has been a wayward way to get to this answer. Thanks for sticking with me. But the Warriors offense is so like ball movement and read and react and, split second decision making. You have the ball, you catch the ball on a pass, you either think to pass, to dribble, or to shoot in like the blink of an eye. You have to have that decision immediately. And it's just so boom, 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 boom. And when it's working great, it's beautiful basketball. Everybody's in motion. You have backdoor cuts. You have screens. You have fake passes. You have alley-oops. You have all of that stuff. And when it's working great, it's really, really good basketball. But when you lose Steph and then you try to run the same thing, it doesn't really work that well, in my opinion. And I think this goes directly back to a Jonathan Kuminga conversation, because I have for a long time felt, and I still feel this way, Jonathan Kuminga's skill set, and this is not a criticism of Kuminga, it's just I think his reality. Jonathan Kuminga's skill set is not one that gets maximized when the Warriors play the style that has made Steph and Draymond so successful, which is what I was just talking about, the read and react, the ball movement, all of that. Like that's not what Kuminga does best. Kuminga tends to do best when what Steel Toe is talking about, when you get a mismatch on him and you can just say, hey, JK, we're going to isolate you on a side, put your head down, get to the rim, get us a basket, or hey, you got a shorter guy on you, back him down in the post and hit the little 10-foot fadeaway, hit the 12-foot fadeaway. Well, he can do that. He did that a couple of times today. So I have always been a little uncertain of how Kuminga fits into a Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Steve Kerr offensive system, right? The way in which the Warriors have run their offense for years, for a decade now. I don't think that has ever really fit Kuminga to fully maximize what his skill is. And it's why at times this year, you remember the game at home against Houston. Let me find the exact game. Warriors played Houston at home on Thursday, December 5th. Steph and Draymond did not play, and the Warriors beat Houston, the current second seed in the West, without Steph and without Draymond, and Kuminga had at that point a career-high 33 points. Okay? Without Steph, without Draymond, a career-high 33 for Kuminga. The next time Steph and Dre did not play in a game was a handful of weeks later in LA versus the Clippers. And the Warriors stayed in that game because Kuminga scored 34 points without Steph and without Dre. At that point, again, a new career high. This isn't that I don't think Kuminga is capable of not being a good player. It just seems he's at his best when the offensive style is a little more geared towards his skill set. And that's the direction the Warriors were heading before the Jimmy Butler trade. But now Jimmy Butler's here, and he fits well with that same Warriors style. So Kuminga is being asked to kind of play in a style that doesn't really, I don't think it necessarily complements what he does best. Now, it's totally fair to say, well, JK, it's on you to adjust. No doubt it is. But I think we also can freely admit, and I think the Warriors know this, that asking JK to fit into the style with which that they play with Steph isn't anywhere near as easy for him, and you're not going to get as effective of a Kuminga doing that, at least not right now. So I think there does have to be some adjustment, specifically when Steph is out and when you're needing more from Kuminga, because it's going to be easier for Kuminga to give you more when the game plan is more complementary to his skill set. Doesn't mean that he has to be the fulcrum or the focal point of the offensive attack just when Steph's out, because you still have Jimmy Butler and you still have Draymond. But you're not going to maximize JK as often if you do it that way. That's my point. 888-957-9570. Now, the 510 makes a good point, and this is what I was just talking about. Jimmy Butler is not the style of the Kerr system either, is he? Kuminga needs to learn from him. Well, Jimmy Butler is a pass-first player, is a very smart player, makes the right decisions almost every time. So I think he does fit in the Kerr system. Now, he's not a great shooter, but I think he fits in the Steve Kerr system. The 510 added right after, Jimmy Butler fits well because he's a great veteran. And I think what you're getting at there is JK just needs to learn how to do that. And yeah, no doubt. But he's also 22 years old. And he's trying to find his way in the NBA, trying to get his first real contract. And I don't blame the guy for wanting to do what he thinks he does best. And what he does best right now doesn't always fit, I think, with what the Warriors ask him to do. But there's two sides to everything, and Kuminga has to adjust. The Warriors might have to adjust to Kuminga, though, if they want to get more out of him consistently. All right, let's hear from Coach Kerr. Warriors lose to Atlanta today, 124-115 on the road to begin the 6-game road trip. They're now 41-30 on the year, and they are only a half game ahead of both the Clippers and the T-Wolves for 6th place in the West. Warriors got down by 20 in the first quarter in this game. They got back within 6 at one point, but they ultimately fall back behind by 20-plus again in the second half, and they lose this one by 9. Here's Warriors head coach Steve Kerr post-game earlier today addressing the media in Atlanta.
Yeah. 40 points in the first quarter. We were swimming upstream the rest of the way, and I love the way the guys fought after that, but it was a layup line in the first quarter. Transition defense was awful. Give them credit. They were ready. They came out smoking hot. And but at halftime, I think they had 23 assists and 3 turnovers. And we didn't impact the game defensively until it was far too late.
I guess the lack of effort surprised you?
No. I think... these games are tough, when you fly across the country and the team's waiting for you, and they've been playing well, and they just blitzed us. It's just, it's disappointing, and you want to have a better effort coming out of the gates, but I've been in this league a long time, and I've seen this an awful lot, tough to get the legs moving and the mind working. That first game, we had this earlier in the season, I think, at Charlotte. Terrible first half. It's not an excuse because it is what it is. Everybody deals with it, and they were by far the better team out of the gates, and that set the tone.
I guess just big picture, where are you at? How do you feel about your point of attack defense at this point?
I didn't feel good about it tonight, but we were the second-ranked defense in the league coming into tonight since we traded for Jimmy. So overall, the defense has been really good. We're right at the top of the league in deflections, forcing turnovers, but didn't happen tonight. So the biggest thing is we got to respond, bounce back. We got a big game in Miami. It'll be a great atmosphere. You could lose a game like this, you got to respond, and especially where we are, in the playoff picture and with everybody right there in the West. So we got to bounce back.
Steve, I think Kuminga scored 16 in the first half. What did you see in him? And then second half, did you just go up with the guys that were kind of getting you back in the game?
Yeah. JK did a good job in the first half, and then second half, I just went with the guys who I felt gave us the best chance.
All right, there's Steve Kerr post-game tonight in Atlanta after the Warriors 124-115 loss. Not an excuse, but Steve Kerr pointing out cross-country games are tough. Yeah, they flew yesterday without Steph. Atlanta waiting at home for him. You did have, of course, the day off was the travel day, and not easy. And again, I said it earlier, I'll say it again. If the Warriors could plan their schedule themselves, they probably would have liked some of the days off on this road trip to happen before the road trip begins. They now have 2 days off. They don't play tomorrow on Sunday. They don't play on Monday. They then play on Tuesday. Then they have Wednesday and Thursday off before playing on Friday. They probably would have liked 2 days off, one travel day and one rest day before this game to begin, but, you don't make the schedule. Tough, but you got to come out with better effort than that. And I think that's what Draymond Green was talking about post-game as well. Let's hear Draymond Green talking about how this Warrior basketball team didn't quite show up ready to play in this one. Here's Draymond post-game in Atlanta.
We came out like we were just going to win the game, and we got diced up defensively in the first quarter. And from that point on, you're fighting an uphill battle. So everybody's comfortable, and they took it to us. So we got to be better. That starts with me. We were terrible defensively. Once guys get into a rhythm, it's hard. They got into a rhythm, had it rolling. It's tough to stop that. So we got to come out ready to play.
Yeah, there it is. Warriors were not ready to play. Draymond said it. You get down by 20, and then everyone else is in a rhythm. And even if you up your defensive intensity, I mean, Niang's already feeling good about himself. Okonwu's already feeling good about himself. Mohamed Gade's already feeling good about himself. Trae Young, I mean, he's always feeling good about his offense, but then it's harder to stop all those guys when they already have it going. All right, last couple of minutes here with you on Warriors Wrap-Up on 95.7 The Game. Let's get to, as we always do, Crashing the Boards, which is brought to you by Chilton Auto Body, the Bay Area leader in collision repair. Shout out to Chilton as always. Crashing the Boards today. You know what? We're going to have to give it to an opponent because no Warrior got in double figures rebounding. I will give Brandon Pajemski a shout-out because he led the way with 8 boards, and for one of the shorter guys on the floor, that is always impressive. 8 rebounds for Pajemski. But Onyeka Okongwu, who killed the Warriors in the first half, he finishes with 12 total boards. He was really good in this game, 22, 12, and 6 for Okongwu, but 12 boards in this one for Onyeka Okongwu, who gets the honor of crashing the boards, which, as always, is brought to you by Chilton Auto Body, the Bay Area leader in collision repair. Thanks to Chilton, as always. Okay, one quick look at the scoreboard from around the NBA. I'll focus here on the only other 2 Western Conference teams in action. The Kings hosting the Bucks. Warriors don't really care about this one. The Kings are essentially locked in to the bottom half of the play-in. I find it very, very unlikely the Warriors would fall back below the Kings. The Kings are only 1 game over 500 presently. Warriors don't really care that much about what the Kings do. But just so you know, midway through the second, Kings have a 6-point lead over Milwaukee. The only other Western Conference team in action today, the Los Angeles Lakers. Lakers a 17-14 lead over, the Bulls have a 17-14 lead over the Bulls. I think the Warriors should be rooting for the Lakers. I think what's best for the Warriors is rooting for Houston to become the 3 seed. For that to happen, you need either the Lakers or Denver, who are both 2 games behind Houston, to win a lot of basketball games in order to push Houston down to the 3, because I still think at this moment the Warriors' ideal first-round matchup would be Houston, and the easiest way for that to happen is Houston be the 3 and the Warriors be the 6, although there is a possibility the Warriors ultimately slip to the play-in, and they then might want Houston to be the 2. So I say all this, and just letting you know, take it with a grain of salt, because we do not know how this is all going to play out. But if you're hopeful the Warriors are the 6, I think you should root for Houston to be the 3. Therefore, you should want either the Lakers or Denver to pass Houston. So with that in mind, you might be a Laker fan tonight, Warrior fans. Just keep that in mind. It is, though, an early, narrow lead for the Bulls in L.A. And that is all for today around the West. As we take a look to what the Clippers and the T-Wolves have on their schedule coming up, those are the 2 teams that you should be most worried about if you are Warrior fans. The Clippers are at home against Oklahoma City tomorrow, 6 o'clock with the tip time tomorrow for OKC. Meanwhile, Minnesota does not play until Monday. So Minnesota off tomorrow. They were also off today. They play in Indiana on Monday, and then they're off all the way until Friday, the T-Wolves are. So not a lot of action for Minnesota. They have played an extra game over the Warriors right now, so that's why. But Indiana Monday, Phoenix Friday for Minnesota. The Clippers, as I mentioned, OKC tomorrow. Then they play on Wednesday in New York and Friday in Brooklyn. They're on a 4-game road trip, which begins after their game against OKC tomorrow. But again, the big game tomorrow for Warrior fans to be locked in on is OKC visiting the Clippers in LA. Warrior fans, of course, should be OKC fans in that one, because the Clippers, if the Clippers beat OKC tomorrow, when we go to bed tomorrow night, the Warriors will not be the 6th seed. It will be the Clippers, because they would then have the same record as the Warriors, and the Clippers have the tiebreaker, so they would leapfrog the Warriors, the Clippers would, with a win over OKC tomorrow. All right, that'll do it for Warriors Wrap Up today. Thanks so much for tuning in. Appreciate all the interaction as always. Warriors are next in action Tuesday in Miami. They have 2 days off. They're going to travel to Miami tomorrow. They get to enjoy the rest of the day in Miami on Sunday. They get a full day Monday in Miami. And then they get leading up to the game on Tuesday in Miami. And then they don't play again until Friday in New Orleans. And they're going to hang out for an extra day plus in Miami after their game, because where else would you rather be at this part of the year than in Miami? A little bit of a relaxing day of rest, hopefully, for the Warriors, and maybe that does them good as they move forward throughout the rest of the regular season. Now only 11 games left, and we shall see if Steph is back on Tuesday. Warriors will provide an update on Monday, and whenever that update comes, we'll have it for you, of course, here on 95.7 The Game. All right, for Steven Risotto, for my guy Cam Williams behind the glass, my name is Mark Randy signing off. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time here on 95.7 The Game.
Capable as a coach, won one title. Why? Because his teams were all freshmen.